My name is Tanya Reed, and I am the Senior Communications Manager at Children's Aid Foundation of Canada. Together with a community of donors, partners, and lived experience experts, we are committed to ensuring that children and youth in child welfare have access to the resources that they need to thrive. As part of our Black History Month activities, we're really excited to be talking to a couple members of this community to talk about a program called Soul Journey, which has been transformative for Black youth and has been made possible by the generosity of our donors. Troy is a research specialist at VersaPay, a Canadian-based fintech company. When he's not busy working, he's busy giving back as a tutor, as a mentor, and as a lived experienced ambassador. Troy grew up in government care, living in multiple homes until finding permanency, and is looking to pursue a second career as an educational consultant. John is the manager of equity and practice at the Children's Aid Society of Toronto. He's focused on building capacity and disrupting systemic inequities for families involved in child welfare. As part of this role, John oversees and serves as a coach in the Soul Journey coaching program, a recently revamped series of learning opportunities provided to Black youth. Thank you both for joining me today and making time for this. So why don't we jump right in? John, I'm going to start with you. What is Soul Journey? Can you tell us a little bit about where it all began?
Sure. Thank you so much, Tanya, and good morning. Good morning, Troy. What is Soul Journey? First, I would want to say, when I think of Soul Journey, to me, it's a journey that is transformational, where it enlightens and adds growth to our Black youth in care. It's a series of learning opportunities and excursions that offer Black youth the opportunity to understand and know the African Caribbean Canadian experience. Soul Journey started back in 2006, so we're looking at maybe 17 years of Soul Journey running. If I could recall from the history, the first trip was to Windsor, Detroit in 2006. So we're looking at 17 years of this program running. And as you mentioned, Tanya, it has changed over a period of time. So today, it's revamped compared to Troy, maybe when you did the program. Now it's a 10-month program. So really building on success for the young people. The current Soul Journey program focuses on improving young people's education, their outcomes, enhancing their overall development and skills, helping you to navigate the journey in care and beyond care while exploring their culture and identity. It provides a space and a sense of community that bring young Black youth together. So when I think about Soul Journey 2006, it was an opportunity to bring Black youth together, a sense of community and space. Now, the program evolved over a period of time, and we partner now with York University Professor Michelle Johnson over at York University, where we meet on campus for 1 week to learn about Black history, followed by a week of excursion. So that was the sort of like the prehistoric Soul Journey. And, you know, youth would go on excursions such as Detroit, Washington, Alabama, New York, Jamaica, Nova Scotia. And to give young people a sense of Black identity, Black culture, Black history in these various countries and cities that we visited. The sense of community focus, Tanya, it was to build more of a deeper connection between the youth and the chaperone, which shifted. Now we have a 10-month program. So the youths meet the first Saturday of every month with myself and Professor Johnson at York University on a Saturday from 10:30 to 12:30. And we do activities such as leadership, goal setting, how to follow out a college application. We have speakers that, you know, come and talk about if you want to be a plumber or a nurse. And these community members are also representative of the Black community. So the youth also hear from their Black elders, I would say, their struggles and their resilience in obtaining employment in these particular fields. So giving them motivation that they too can be in these career settings. And then it concludes with a trip. Actually, last year, 2023, we went to Nova Scotia. And for 2024, the 10 months started in November, and we're looking at Washington, D.C. for the 2024 trip. So in a nutshell, Tanya, that is the Soul Journey program.
Wow, it sounds really amazing. Thank you so much for providing such a comprehensive overview of the program. Troy, I know that you had an opportunity to do the Soul Journey experience. Can you tell us a little bit about where you were in your life, like when you took that program and the impact it had?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so again, nice to see you, John, and thanks for giving kind of an idea of the program and how it's evolved. So, you mentioned Washington, D.C. In 2024. So I was actually in Washington, D.C. in 2011. And and so when I participated in Soul Journey, I was transitioning from my grade 11 year of high school to my grade 12 year. And so that was a really empowering and uplifting moment for myself because I was, going through a lot of transitions as a young person. I was, trying to figure out where I wanted to go for university at that point, and just going through a series of, you know, issues with family and all that stuff. So, for me, I actually went to Washington, D.C. for a week. So I got the chance to stay kind of in a hotel with a chaperone and two other young people. And actually ended up meeting another young person that I had actually been in a foster home with years prior. So that was actually kind of a moment to reconnect as well. So that was kind of great. But in terms of the impact of the trip having on me, it was really impactful. So, I got to see the Smithsonian museums. I got to hear about, the whole sort of Black experience from actual orators over there, and listening to people speak and teach on that. And being able to see the dichotomies between rich and poor, and being able to see the White House, and being able to look at to go to the one of the oldest Baptist churches in Washington, D.C., that sort of served as a landmark for the community, and kind of a hub for community service, and folks to get meals and things like that. So there were a lot of interesting nuances for me to sort of observe, and I think in my brain at that time, it was certainly an uplifting experience. It took place in the summertime as well, so it was great weather. It was great to connect with so many young people, and a lot of the young people that I actually connected with on that trip, I'm friends with most of them today. So we often reflect on that experience as an opportunity to really, connect with people like ourselves, like Black young people who were also transitioning from high school to university and not sure what they wanted to do. And, it was a really pivotal moment in my life. And I think one of the most important things that came from that as well is the power of words and expression and poetry. So I actually started writing spoken word poetry shortly after attending that event because of that, because I was also exposed to some of that stuff over there as well, and being able to just look at the diversity and the different ways that even the slaves, like the ways that they looking at some of the pathways that they chose to, when they were being moved to the States, and how they developed, slave songs, and the ways that they communicated in code to get away from their slave masters. All of that stuff sort of wrapped up into a huge storytelling experience. So it was great for me, to say the least.
Okay. And Tanya, can I add that piece? Troy, you mentioned about community, and the current Soul Journey really focuses on those two aspects. One, that community. So you talk about, in that Soul Journey experience, you met another youth who you were in care with in a previous placement. So that sense of bringing young people together, not only because they may have connected in terms of placement, but because those shared identity experiences, right? So it's about that community focus, but also right now the focus is also about that academic. And we know youth in foster care in general have low academic achievement and outcomes. And when we think about our Black youth specifically compared to white youth, right? how do we look at that data and that research? So the focus of the current Soul Journey is not just, and no disrespect to our community, but to focus on history and culture and identity, but to build the overall development and skill set of our Black youth. So focusing on academics, looking at credits, looking at reports, having people come and speak to them, as Troy said about, look where he's now speaking and doing spoken word. So it's really about that community and also about the academic piece, and not just learning about, yes, this is how I show up in my Blackness and be confident, but how also can I navigate life with skills and tools to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to add, and maybe ask, building that sense of community and having that sense of Blackness and maybe feeling rooted in something with other people who have, a shared experience as yours. Did that also help kind of propel as you were making these choices for university, say, Troy? Was there something about being anchored in a sense of community that gave you the strength or the belief that you could, continue to kind of aspire to like have bigger dreams?
Yeah, that's a really, I mean, that's a good question. I think, I mean, definitely. When I returned from my trip at the time, I actually remembered the night after I returned from the trip on that big coach bus. I actually couldn't. I stayed up all night. I couldn't sleep. So I think that one of the biggest things that impacted me was um, being able to see, being able to listen to people's storytelling in Washington D.C. and looking at their speaking ability and how they could, relate to other people, and just the capacity to not even speak from a paper, but just like speak from their minds and being able to tell history. And I started thinking about, my contribution to the world at that point, and where was I going to go? So at that point, that year, actually, in terms of my education, I got involved with my student council. I took up sports. I made changes to my life in terms of getting involved. So I think definitely it impacted me there, because I was also very shy as well. I mean, I was very social in school and fairly good student, but I was also very shy. So I think that trip kind of brought me out of my shell a little bit, and allowed me to kind of get rid of some of that trepidation around, hey, I might not be good enough for one thing or the other. And then just kind of on a personal note, I actually I always loved mathematics when I was in high school, but never did well at it up until grade 11. So I also I ended up getting, I think, an 84 in my advanced functions course in grade 12 after that experience. So my whole sort of mindset around education, especially in school and getting involved and feeling like I had more to contribute to the world, um, definitely shifted. And I think it's in a large part because of being, I was able to see a different scene and, be around, different people, and kind of also being able to pull from, I guess, Black history to say, hey, like there have been people who were successful before I have. So if they can do it, I can also do it as well. So yeah, it was definitely an empowering moment. And yeah, it definitely shifted my mindset. Absolutely. Yeah.
So like such a powerful like statement and testimony. Like thanks for sharing that. What it does make me think, John, I know that you have been involved with the program for a few years now, and have taken different groups on different trips. Is what Troy speaks to kind of the same kind of stories that you hear from other youth, and what do their caregivers think? What do their caregivers see when youth come back from these trips?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Tanya. So I would say from a youth perspective, so Troy mentioned that sense of connecting with other youth. but it's also about connecting with adults in their community that goes beyond care. And when we think of youth in care, they're removed from their community, for various reasons, safety, etc. But how do we ensure that sense of community continues, right? And I think about, for my son, have an aunt, have an uncle, have a cousin, right? So this sort of extended community is there. And when a kid in care often do not have that extension. So how do we rally around, so that saying, Tanya, it takes a village, it really, how do we extend that community around our Black youth in care, right? To build that sense of self and identity, but also help propel them, as Troy talked about, propelling him, So for some of our youth, I would say, I know one particular youth that comes to mind right now. Troy, you might recall, being a youth in care, part of the ministry standards and expectation that you fill out these forms every year, and it goes to the ministry to give you experience of being in care. And recently, Tanya, a supervisor reached out to me and said, hey, just wanted to let you know, this youth wrote in his feedback to the ministry, and when the question was from the ministry, who outside your foster home do you identify as an ally and a support? And it was very touching to know this youth identify myself, because I've only been working with this youth for a year. So just think of the impact of a year you can have on a young person, right? Troy talks about that impact of a week in Washington, right? So the impact of this program on our young people, these are what some of the things they are saying. When they say that they could look up and see one of a chaperone or the manager that runs this program, that is an ally and got their back and support them, that speaks volumes, right? When a caregiver could say to me, I have seen a shift in this young person when they came back from Soul Journey, where they're more respectful and how they speak to me, how they, they be more helpful in the home, right? Because it's not just a learning about identity, it's a learning about responsibility. I think in care, we talk about rights, but young people also need to know about their responsibility, right? So we push those things in terms of rights and responsibilities. How do you show up? How do you, interact, communicate? How do you be a leader, right? And why the program also extended to Tanya is, when we hear from chaperones to say the week, Troy, maybe in those days when you had, in 2011, it was like a week at York University and a week excursion. And that week of York University and week excursion, the week at York really didn't give much bonding and, really connectedness for the youth and the chaperones. So the 10 months, every Saturday, on that first Saturday of every month, that young person or young people are showing up with the chaperone. It gives them that connectedness to understand, know these young people. So when I hear chaperones saying, these youth, I hear what is on a piece of paper, but these youth are cool, these youth, and that's what it is. You see a different side of these young people who wants to be part of community, who wants to know and connect. So these are some things we hear from, youth themselves. They feel supported, they feel they have an ally and support. Caregivers seeing a difference in attitudes from these youth. And then you have chaperones saying, hey, how can I be more of a mental support to these young people? Because I'm seeing beyond what is written on a piece of paper. So these are the things, Tanya, we are hearing from people around young people who support the program.
It sounds incredible. Do you know how many people, and I'm not to put you on the spot here, so it's okay if you don't have the answer. How many young people have had an opportunity to go through the Soul Journey program? It just seems like you just want as many people having access to that as possible.
Yeah. To give a number, Troy, like you, I'm not good at math. So if it's been running for 17 years, I would say, Troy, maybe about 19, 20 young people in your group at that time?
Yeah, I think it was about 25 or 30, something like that.
25 or 30. Yeah, so Tanya, looking at 25, 30 people per year, and then if you think about what we did pause in the pandemic. Now the current group that I'm supporting with, we have 13. So it's dropped a bit, but just thinking of the amount of young people that came through Soul Journey, it's a good number.
Yeah. That's amazing. And so part of what you're saying, the reason to extend it to this kind of 10-month program versus the 2 weeks is so you can continue to kind of build up this sense of community, build some really, lifelong and kind of authentic bonds while as well imparting some of this more academic and skills training and soft skills and all of those types of all rolled into the package.
Spot on to it. That exactly is. It's not just looking at, before it was just focused on Black culture, Black history, and identity. And that's good for our young people to have. But how do we support them with those other soft skills you mentioned? How do we help them to build resilience, the communication? So, the academic piece. We have a youth right now, passionate about university. He is like, I am going to university. January 15, the night before, so January 15, I think was the deadline for submitting applications to universities. We were on the phone January 14, the night, trying to get applications in. He submitted two and he wanted another application. Is that this passion of wanting to be successful, right? We have have a youth I spoke to last night, shifted program from vet, going into University of Vet. Now she wants to go into paramedics. Okay, so let's shift that. Look, what do you need to get into be a paramedic? So he's looking at how do we build the overall skills development to be successful for these young people over the 10 months.
Yeah, I wanna also add to that if that's possible. So I think the two important themes as well that I picked up when I was, went through Soul Journey is leadership and mentorship. I think especially mentorship. So I know a lot of institutions or companies, even I know my company does it as well, is they focus on mentorship a lot. So being able to learn from or be paired with a person who has more or less experience than you, but has a diversity of skill sets to where they can bring something else to the table. So being able to attend, that trip and look at, and again, be paired with a chaperone and being able to participate in group activities where you're taking a leadership role in something, or you are, you go to a church and you get a chance to speak there, or you're leading an activity. Those things, I mean, John, to your point, when a young person comes back from that, that's why they're able to help out at home, or that's why they're able to join stuff at school or do extracurricular stuff, or maybe their grades shoot up because of that experience. So I think there's of all the themes that sort of come from that experience, I think leadership is very important as well, and mentorship for sure. And I think a lot of institutions are now focusing on those two pieces more because of the disconnect after COVID and not being able to have that sense of, or feel like there's a sense of community. I mean, not being able to see people as often and so on, and now having the ability to reconnect. But yeah, those two things I think as well speak to that as you were talking.
Well, yeah, agreed.
I have probably just two more questions that I wanted to ask, and it's perfectly linked to what you were just kind of saying about mentorship. And Troy, I know you spend a lot of time, you said, you're tutoring other youth, you're mentoring other youth. Do you feel that part of that also kind of came out when you kind of went through this soul journey experience and decided you were looking ahead at your life and what kind of impact you make? Is this part of the impact that you're looking to make?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes. I think that was sort of the kind of the huge shift. I think that the pivot, I think, even going back to before Soul Journey, I mean, growing up, in care, I didn't have a father initially. So what I always, that experience sort of helped me to kind of believe in my ability to do that more, right? So I always, like when I was in high school and then even university and now, I sort of looked at, what did I not have in my life, and how could I be that to somebody else? How can I be an example to somebody else in that regard? So, yeah, I mean, certainly that sort of was the thing I think that shifted my mind into, well, you know what, I can sort of provide support to another young person, and maybe I can become a tutor, maybe I can do this, so then I made that initial step, and just tried to be an example, just tried to be someone that young people could come to for advice or for just questions. Sometimes it's intimidating to ask a teacher or ask like a professor or ask a parent. So being able to ask another young person, especially if they look like you, is empowering, right? So I just tried to be that example. So yeah, definitely Soul Journey played the pivotal role in terms of, again, shifting my mindset, to in that direction for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'd like to ask you both, we're putting this little chat together so we can share it with, our supporters and our donors, and other stakeholders that are involved with the foundation and care about the work that we do. What do you think? What is it, if there was one thing that you wanted to let them know that you think that it was important for them to know about supporting programs like this one in particular, but supporting the foundation even more broadly?
Mhm. Um, I think for me, speaking in terms of like for donors and part of the community, in terms of um, what I would like them to know about this program, I think for us as human beings to think about our privilege, to think about the benefits, to think about the luxuries, to think about how we navigate this world. And one might say, Tanya, well, I work hard for that. So yeah, I work hard for it. It's mine. But just like you're working hard, Black youth work hard as well. But we also know, although they're working hard, there are barriers and there's a systemic other marginalized individuals face on a daily basis, although they're working hard, right? Just because they're Black or just because they're marginalized, they face those barriers and they're working hard. So I think what I would like the community donors to know is that this program is meaningful, is important, it's impactful, as we hear from Troy himself, it's impactful that helps young Black youth in care navigate being in care and beyond care. It builds confidence. Troy talked about leadership. Despite the struggles they face, right? That Troy can go back home or youth can go back to their foster placement and be different. Be different in terms of like, I have that support. I can do this, build capacity, build confidence. There are many other programs that support youth or support youth in care. But what is so significant and so important, special about Soul Journey? It's about focusing on community for our Black youth in care, but also focusing on building resilience. We talk about Washington, the excursions give young people that sense of connecting at deeper to their identity and culture. When you can go, as George said, the Baptist Church in Washington, or when we go to Nova Scotia, we can see where the ship came in with enslaved people in Nova Scotia. It really connects you. You can go to a museum and you can see, what our ancestors and, elders went through for us to be here today. It really impacts and propel you. And I want to, just also put out there, Troy talks about now you give back, right? Because of what you receive. And Maya Angelou, one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou is that I have found that among its other benefits, giving liberates the soul of the giver. So when you give to the foundation, when you give to the community, right, you're liberating yourself by knowing the impact this is having on our youth, who then impact greater on in terms of society. So it is impactful program. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, I mean, I completely agree, John. And I think, two things come to mind when I sort of think about that is perspective is a big one.
Mhm.
And I say that because when I went through that experience, even now, like since then, my perspective has completely changed, like completely. when you get the opportunity to just see, especially in America, because there's a lot more barriers and stigma, and it's a different, they're right below us, but it's a different world over there. A lot of dichotomy, a lot of rich and poor, a lot of just different world, a lot of history. And so when you, as a young person, when you just taking a week or 10 months or 3 weeks or however much time to step away from your kind of niche and then look at that and see that, it changes the way you think about everything. It changes the way you think about education. It changes the way you think about family. It changes the way you think about your, adolescence. And I can keep going. So I think that piece is very important. I would also, I would even say it's necessary, especially for Black young people. And then the second piece as well is, I would say, it takes a village, right? Being able to spend time with a chaperone and spend time with other young people. Again, for me, I was able to reconnect with a former young person that I had lived with, right? So being able to do that and connect and, really start to, build your social capital as well, and your sense of self-worth and yeah, and just add that to your repertoire as a young person, and just, yeah, being able to say, hey, I've, when I go to school and I have discussions in university, when I have discussions with my friends, I can add that perspective to the discussion, right? A lot of people haven't seen that, right? So to be in care, sometimes it's looked at as, oh, you're in foster care, you're whatever, you don't have as much privilege, you don't have, but to be able to add that conversation and say, no, I do have that perspective. I've seen XYZ. I can tell you stories where I've heard people talk about XYZ. That's very empowering. And I was having those conversations with my friends when I was in grade 12 and in university, and I still have those conversations. So being able to sort of to maximize that potential is I think is absolutely necessary for young people.